I didn't put it in the website. All right, sure.
An example of this is take for example um, the health industry, and some recent blockchain applications that have occurred in the health industry have been regarding the storage of information, because medical health records um, are extremely private and they need to be kept extremely secure. And for example, if you want to transfer your dental health records uh, to one hospital to the other, if it is in a centralized system, I mean decentralized system, meaning one specific company does not have control of this data, but this data is shared between multiple different companies, um, that is called a private blockchain. If it's only shared between these five companies. A public blockchain is open, in which we ourselves can see and use it. That's something like common cryptocurrencies that you might have heard about, Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and this is as I said, distributed. It's in a form of a ledger, and this is extremely permanent. If once you add something to the ledger, it's impossible to difficult to take it out. And the idea of blockchain was uh, first originally hypothesized or published in this white paper in 2008 by Satoshi Nakamoto. Actually, no one knows who he is or she is. Um, this was believed to be created under a fake pseudonym, so we don't actually know who Satoshi Nakamoto is. But he released a Bitcoin white paper in which he outlined basically an electronic cash or a digital transfer system implemented on this blockchain technology. And this is what um, makes one of the core ideas of current Bitcoin that we have. And there's something called Hyperledger Fabric. Um, if you've heard about blockchain, we're not going to go a lot into detail about this since we don't have a lot of time, and this is extremely introductory. But if you're interested in learning more about blockchain, possibly for the hackathon, create a few contracts that you want to include in your project, I would suggest you look at tutorials and read more about Hyperledger Fabric. Um, that would be a good tool to do. So now the question is, how does blockchain actually work? We know that blockchain can be used, it's extremely decentralized, meaning that no one person has control over this data. Um, so basically, how it works is that one user sends a request for a transaction, for example, a monetary transaction, a cash payment, and a block which represents the transaction is created. And all of these blocks are linked to each other in what is called a blockchain, and this block is broadcasted towards all the other networks nodes of the network in which these nodes are connected, and this node is therefore validated, and the block, if it is validated and correctly validated, it is added to the chain, and once that occurs, the transaction gets verified and executed. So the multiple different advantages of blockchain include um, a lot of faster settlement. For example, we want to do a cash transfer system, right? And we have multiple different banks. If right now we want to do a cash transfer system, um, we use, for example, PayPal. PayPal, scratch PayPal. We want to transfer money from one bank to the another bank, and how that's going to work is that we call the bank calls the intermediary where the money is being held, and then that calls the other bank where it's being transferred, and that takes up a lot of time. Making all those calls, that transaction, that takes time, and time wastes money. In order to make things more efficient is what this blockchain goes. It takes away this unnecessary intermediary, and There basically puts producer to consumer and vice versa. And there's also increased network capacity, more security, as I said, because in order to hack or change something in a blockchain, uh, blockchain is not just one person who's authenticating the data. It's multiple different people and multiple different servers. And it's published by many different studies that it's extremely hard to hack, um, or since all of these blocks are connected per se. For example, one block is dependent on another block. If you want to change one thing, all the others would need to be changed as well, and immediately an error would be found, or that change would not be able to be made. And if you make a change or an addition to this blockchain, it needs to be verified by every single node, as you can see in our previous slide. Um, so based on these advantages, now we can talk about more about a centralized versus a decentralized ledger. So as I said before, a ledger is basically a list of either transactions, um, any information that we have. Um, and one thing is a centralized ledger, as you can see in this page. And right now they have a bank ledger, and that is centralized. And there's multiple different clients. You want to transfer money from client B to client A. Client B contacts bank contacts A. And instead of that, we have the distributed ledger, which there's only one ledger. All nodes have some level of access to this ledger, and therefore they can all easily contact each other. And the different advantages of a distributed ledger includes that it can be used to help transfer assets of value and ownerships. And this type of ownerships can include also legal types of ownership, including like intellectual property. These days, a lot of copyright protections have been used, have been distributed or created using blockchain, because if we create something using blockchain, it's hard to create an exact replica, and it's easier to track how this intellectual property is being exchanged hands, if it's sold, or being broken in any specific instance. And one subsection of blockchains is called smart contracts. And smart contracts are usually created, they provide like a business logic layer to the block submission. And there are many different languages in which you can use to create a smart contract. One is Ethereum, and the language is Solidity, which we will be using. And another common developer application that some people use is called Solana by Chainlink, and that's usually programmed using the Rust language. So my personal preference or recommendation is that if you're initially getting started to using or learning about blockchain technology, I would suggest that you stick with Ethereum or Solidity, because there's more information, more tutorials out there. Personally, on my research that I've done on Solidity rather than Solana technology. And smart contracts is basically a contract between two parties, and both of these parties remain anonymous, and this contract is stored in a ledger. And this ledger or contract is self-executing. So, for example, let me take um, a financial put or call option. That's basically, this is not exactly related, but if you understand what this financial concept is, you might have a basic understanding. So basically, if the stock goes to got down to a specific price, the share will be sold, or vice versa. And it's basically that's one concept that they have in stocks. So basically, similarly, if some event happens, for example, the stock goes down, this contract will be immediately executed. And some advantages of smart contracts is that there'll be total transparency. There's very less paperwork. It's trustworthy, and it's very prone to having guaranteed outcomes. And now we'll talk about a little bit about the applications of blockchain technology, some current examples that they have, and some examples in industries that we can also talk about. And then after this, I'll be doing a quick and short tutorial on creating a freelancer um, contract using the Solidity language. And this will be using the Remix IDE, which I will show you soon. So Web 3.0. This is basically um, if you've if you've delved into blockchain technology before, you might have heard of um, Web 3.0. But basically, it's a decentralized form of the current internet that we have. And that is one example of blockchain technology. Another is cryptocurrencies, as I said before, Bitcoin and Dogecoin are some of the many examples that they have. And specifically in industry, for example, healthcare, health records, as I said in a previous example, is one aspect in which blockchain technology has been used so that all health records can stay in one place. And you can add any type of file you want onto a blockchain, PDF, PNG, stuff like that. And legal applications include intellectual property, patent rights, um, copyright protections. These have all been issued on blockchain technology as well. One other example which some people might have been experienced with or heard about has NFTs, so non-fungible tokens. And that's basically a piece of artwork that is created on this blockchain. So basically, it is similar to a copyright protection or a patent, but this is a piece of artwork which can be tracked and sold through this blockchain framework, so that its price is extremely accurate of its determined value. And now that we've talked a little bit more about the applications of blockchain, I'll be talking. I'll be showing you a quick tutorial right now. I Give me a second so that I can pull up the rest of the information. I mean, uh, the rest of my notes. Un- Until then, does anyone have any questions that I might be able to help you with, or any questions that you have regarding blockchain? I'm not really familiar with Gadget Town, so you can just unmute yourself if you have any questions. If not, that's fine as well. Okay, so in the chat, I'm putting right now the Remix IDE, and this is basically the platform, the online editor, which you can use to um, create a blockchain or a smart contract. So since we have, I'll share my screen now. Okay, great. So can everyone see my screen? Okay, great. So basically, once you log in, you might see the file pages. Just click on the file, click under contracts. Contracts basically um, where you're going to create your app, not app, basically your contract, I guess. Next, right click, new file, and then create, um, name your contract. I just created contract.sol. Sol is just added for the Solidity language. So now this is just a quick and basic contract that you can create. Pragma Solidity is just talking about the version of Solidity that you have downloaded, and contract my contract is just the name of your contract that you want to create. Uh, Now that since that is finished, the address is basically a 64-bit hexadecimal number or number key that is using cryptography is generated um, to help you. It helps determine the key for your blockchain and this particular network that we are using. And the uint is basically another variable type that you can we can see in this example. So there are many other types in which you can use, including a string, a boolean, an integer, an address, and much more. And um, yeah, so this is the type. Public or private is something you can choose, and then employer is just a name that a name that you want to assign to a specific variable. So now we want to add a function to our contract, and we're going to create a constructor. A constructor is basically if um, you're constructing like a method uh, that takes in a few parameters, and in this instance, it takes the freelancer's address or the freelancer's key or a specific location, and it takes another parameter, a variable, the deadline in which we want that specific project to end by, to be submitted by, and this is also public in this instance. So public can be called from inside and outside the contract. Private can be only called inside the contract. And we have, other than that, the multiple different constructors that we have. In this instance, it just talks about the employer, and we're sending a message to the employer. And the freelancer is defined as the freelancer address that we have, and the deadline is just setting it to the deadline. So this is basically constructing the variables that we have, um, or the variables that are given. I'm not going to go into much more further detail because um, based on the time that we have right now, I just wanted to show you the basics of blockchain, so that we can you can explore more during this hackathon. I can suggest some more tutorials that you can use, that you can read from. But if you have any questions, you can put in the chat. This is just a basic how to get started with blockchain. What is blockchain? And if you want to learn more about how to create a contract, more detailed explanation that requires a little bit of math knowledge and a little bit more, you should be more familiar with what a ledger is, hyperledger fabric, and all those details. Just go to the Ethereum developer page. I can find it and put in this chat. After this workshop, I'll actually tell one of the leaders to put it in the announcement channels. But yeah, the workshop is finished. Any questions, please let me know.